Are Brazil still Brazil? Or are they simply a team living on past glory? For decades, that question would have sounded ridiculous. This is the nation of Pelé, the nation of Garrincha, the nation of Romario, the nation of Ronaldo, the nation of Ronaldinho, the only country to win 5 World Cups. A country so feared that opponents often felt beaten before kickoff. But football does not care about history. Football only cares about what happens on the pitch. And as the 2026 World Cup unfolds, Brazil look nothing like the team that built their reputation. The yellow shirt remains. The 5 stars remain. The fear factor does not. If you enjoy football stories and analysis, subscribe. For most of football history, Brazil entered major tournaments with one expectation: win. Not compete. Not impress. Win. Anything less was considered failure. That expectation existed because Brazil always had something every other nation wanted: great players everywhere. In 2002, Brazil had Ronaldo, Rivaldo, and Ronaldinho leading the attack. Behind them were Cafu and Roberto Carlos, 2 of the greatest fullbacks football has ever seen. The midfield had experience, quality, and control. Every position contained a player capable of changing a match. For years later, Brazil somehow looked even stronger. Ronaldinho was the best player in the world. Kaká was approaching his peak. Adriano was one of the most feared strikers on the planet. Ronaldo remained a global superstar. Robinho was emerging. The squad was overflowing with talent. Even their substitutes could start for most national teams. Now compare those teams to the current Brazil squad. The difference is impossible to ignore. This is not an attack on the current players. It is reality. Brazil once had world-class players in every department. Today, that is no longer true. The attack lacks a truly feared striker. The midfield lacks authority. The defense lacks iconic leaders. Even the squad selection has raised questions. That brings us to Neymar. Few players have carried the weight of a football nation the way Neymar has. For years, Brazil depended on him. Every attack flowed through him. Every major moment involved him. Every opponent built a plan around stopping him. The problem is that this is no longer prime Neymar. Injuries have taken their toll. His availability has become unpredictable. His influence is no longer guaranteed. Yet Brazil still struggles to move on. The decision to include Neymar in the squad immediately divided opinion. Many supporters celebrated. Others questioned whether reputation had become more important than form. Those questions became louder when Neymar was unable to start Brazil's opening match because of injury concerns. This is not about disrespecting Neymar. His place in Brazilian football history is secure. The question is different. Can Brazil continue building around a player whose body can no longer be trusted to deliver consistently at the highest level? Many fans looked at players such as João Pedro and wondered whether Brazil had chosen the past instead of the present. That debate reflects a larger problem. Brazil no longer looks certain about its identity. And nowhere is that more obvious than in attack. For decades, Brazil produced strikers who terrified defenders. Romario, Ronaldo, Adriano, even Luis Fabiano delivered when called upon. Opponents knew goals were coming. The current squad does not inspire the same confidence. Who is the striker that defenders fear? Who is the player guaranteed to score when Brazil needs a goal? Who is the player capable of deciding a World Cup knockout match on his own? There is no clear answer. That uncertainty would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. Then there is the midfield. This may be the biggest decline of all. Brazil once controlled matches through midfield brilliance. They produced players who dictated tempo, players who created chances, players who dominated elite opponents. The current midfield does not command that same respect. Too often, Brazil's midfield feels invisible. Matches pass through it rather than being controlled by it. The creativity is limited. The authority is missing. Against weaker opponents, those flaws can be hidden. Against elite nations, they're exposed. That is why Brazil frequently struggles against the strongest teams. The gap between Brazil and the rest of the world has disappeared. France no longer fears Brazil. Spain no longer fears Brazil. Argentina no longer fears Brazil. Portugal no longer fears Brazil. The yellow shirt alone is no longer enough. That reality became painfully clear against Croatia in 2022. Brazil had more talent. Brazil had more quality. Brazil took the lead. Brazil still went home. One lapse in concentration ended the dream. That defeat revealed something many fans had been ignoring. Brazil were no longer unbeatable. The aura had vanished. The rest of the world had caught up. Some nations may have even moved ahead. Look at Argentina. They entered the 2022 World Cup with a clear identity. Every player understood his role. Every decision served the team. They were not the most talented squad on paper. They were the best team. Look at Spain. Look at France. Look at Portugal. Each has a clear football identity. Each possesses players capable of deciding matches at the highest level. Each enters tournaments believing they can beat anyone. Brazil still believes it belongs in that category. The question is whether the evidence supports that belief. Perhaps the most worrying sign is that Brazil's reputation increasingly depends on memories. Fans still talk about 1970. Fans still talk about 1994. Fans still talk about 2002. But football moves forward. No team wins matches because of what happened 20 years ago. No opponent loses because of history. Every generation must create its own legacy. This generation has not done that. Not yet. And that is why the criticism exists. Not because Brazil lacks talent. Not because Brazil lacks passion. Because the standards are different. This is Brazil, the nation that set the standard for football excellence. The nation that made the world fall in love with the sport. The nation that taught football how to smile. When people question Brazil today, they are comparing this team to greatness. Nothing less. Yet despite all these concerns, writing Brazil off completely would be foolish. History shows that great nations can recover quickly. One strong tournament can change everything. One breakthrough star can transform a team. One winning run can restore belief. Brazil still has quality. Brazil still has experience. Brazil still has the weight of expectation that comes with wearing the yellow shirt. The difference is that expectation alone no longer guarantees respect. That respect must be earned. And this World Cup may be the biggest test Brazilian football has faced in decades. Because for the first time in a very long time, Brazil are not trying to prove they can win the World Cup. They're trying to prove they are still Brazil.